Hello and welcome to the Sunday League Effect. I'm of course on my own today. Nicholas, my right-hand man, if you will, is AWOL. I think he's working. I hope he's working anyway, because getting hold of him at the minute is an absolute nightmare. And so much has gone on since our last video, and we promised you more content, and there's been less. So this is the first one of 2026, I believe, which is absolutely atrocious considering it is 2 weeks into the new year. But we do have a special guest, Muttley there. Marley, hello. He goes, hello, boy. Right, let me move that. Say hello. And there's the dog. He looks like a miniature version of a dog, but he's not. He's a normal sized dog. It's just I got a cheap Vortex camera. But anyway, enough about that. If you're new around here, please do like and subscribe, because we do try and give you content. At the minute, we're not doing very well in the consistency, but we do try and bring you content. And I promise you, this year is going to be big for the Sunday League Effect. We're going to do a lot more vlogs, a lot more trips, and hopefully some content that you guys would love to enjoy, and would love to get involved in. Right, so today, because it's been so long, so much has happened, I'll give you a quick roundup of what we missed, which you all know now, but anyway, I'm going to talk about it because I've got no one else to talk about it to. And if I'm honest, Nick isn't very well versed in the world of football, as you all will know quite well. But anyway, so major changes at the top of the table and midway through the table, in that Chelsea obviously got rid of Maresca, got Liam Rosenior in from Strasbourg. Who knows what that is going to develop into. For me, it seems like the methodology behind what they're trying to do for players has now transpired to what they want in a manager, bringing in a young manager on a 6-year deal, which is astronomically long. I've never heard of a deal that long for a manager before. Apart from, I think, Eddie Howe, actually, thinking about it, Eddie Howe might have got a 6-year contract when he first went to Newcastle. But then that Saudi money is slightly different. They can afford to just sack him. But saying that, so can Todd Bowley. But anyway, 6-year deal for a manager who I believe was sacked by Reading. Did okay at Derby. Derby that was, I think, in administration or going into administration at the time. Very young team as well. Did well to keep him up. Was doing okay at Strasbourg. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know a whole heap about French football, because in reality, who does, apart from French people? I don't know anything about it. I just know Strasbourg are doing okay. He came in and he got that very good win in the FA Cup. It'll be interesting to see how they get on this weekend in the first Premier League game since he took over, because obviously it's a whole different beast to what he will be used to, both in Championship and in Ligue 1. It's a very different prospect, and Chelsea being one of the biggest clubs in the league, they're home to Brentford at the weekend, so good opportunity for him to hit the ground running and try and perform well, I suppose. Yesterday, the day you're watching this was the day after the Carabao Cup semi-final, so they lost 3-2 to Arsenal. Didn't watch the game because I couldn't care less. I watched the second leg because the second leg's always better in the Carabao Cup semi-finals. Rather stupidly, I watched the other semi-final, the Newcastle Man City game, which I know it wasn't on the same day, but I tend to just choose one because West Ham aren't in it. Of course they're not, because we are fucking atrocious. I knew there wasn't going to be a great deal of goals. I thought there wouldn't be a great deal of goals in either game. And obviously Chelsea, Arsenal turned out to be quite the spectacle, as they say. But he picked a rotated team, and well, they did okay according to the result. I know they lost, but if you look at the players that he left out of the squad completely, so there was no Cole Palmer in the squad. I know that for instance. There was no Pedro Neto did play, didn't he? Yeah, he did play because I saw him have an argument. Obviously, Caicedo wasn't playing, but yeah, it's an interesting one. And for me, jury's out. Jury's always going to be out for a new manager I don't know anything about, but I do like him. I like the way he presents himself. He seems to look the part, and I know it's got nothing to do with his ability to manage a football team, but if it's to go off what he's started like in terms of the way he's represented himself and the aesthetics look good. So watch this space. But a little bit of transfer speculation. It's going to be around for a while, I think, with the amount of young players that they have and the fact that Chelsea is so far away from winning major titles. And they're miles away. Like, if you look at last season, coming up to Christmas, they was in a title race, fell off a cliff. This season, in a title race up to Christmas, fell off a cliff. They're not going to win the Champions League. They're not going to win the FA Cup. But to be fair, they might win the FA Cup and they might win the Carabao Cup. Like, they're in a very similar position. I know they're better off in a far better squad than Manchester United, but a very similar position in that they're miles off league titles. They're miles off proper international, not international, European titles. They're going to finish in Champions League spaces fairly regularly over the next 10 years. They're going to pick up the odd domestic trophy, but that model for me, they're constantly buying players under 24 and replacing managers when they don't quite get what they want from them in terms of what they tell them to do. I just don't see that any longevity in it. I don't see it working. But I could be wrong. I'm not an expert. I'm merely a fan like all of you. But anyway, enough of Chelsea. We've had enough of the scum. So now the next managerial change, don't know if the timeline works out or not, but is of course Ruben Amorim. And now, for those people who are still here from around about Christmas last year, or it was November when Ruben came in, myself and Nicholas sat in this very room and we had the conversation, and it went a little bit like this. In 18 months' time, we will come back here and Ruben Amorim would have been sacked and I'll get someone else in. Now, he did not make it to 18 months. He made it to 14 months. But Manchester United is like reading George's Marvellous Medicine. It's a decent book, but you know how it ends. And every time they get a new manager in, it's the same story. You know it's going to end one way, and that's in 18 months to 2 years. You're going to have to replace them because it is a toxic waste pit of absolute cess. No, I got that wrong. A toxic cesspit of absolute waste. Wasted potential, wasted players, wasted prospects, and wasted money. I might have said that twice. Manchester United, whether you like to admit it or not, as a general consumer of football in the Premier League, Manchester United are one of the 3 biggest teams in England, factually. And that is astonishing given the fact they've been so poor for so long. But they are. And they should be able to get back to the top relatively quickly if the right things are in place. And now that is from the top to the bottom. And that's all the way from the boardroom levels to the players out on the pitch. And what they're doing is a constant cycle of replacing managers, getting rid of a few players, buying some more players, then replacing the old players, getting a new manager in, new players, then the previously new players go. And it's a constant vicious cycle of shit. The Ineos takeover was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Ratcliffe, or whatever his name is, he's a United fan that said he'd leave if it wasn't fun anymore. Who's it fun for? Who's it fun for? I'm not a Manchester United fan. I'm a West Ham fan, as you all know. But it is the only club in England that I can look sideways to and say, yeah, we're run poorly, but we're not Manchester United poorly. And by that I mean, like I said, my previous statement, they're one of the 3, maybe 2 biggest clubs in England. And they are struggling in all areas of football. They're not in Europe this year. They're out of all domestic cups. They are going to play once a week. Once a week until May. That is, when was the last time Manchester United played once a week? Like, as any Manchester United fans that might watch this, when was the last time you played once a week? I don't know what Manchester United needs. I'm not a guru. I'm not Mystic Mike. I don't know what it needs, but I do know it's not going to end any differently how they currently are. So they've got interim in. They're going to get a new manager in, and I have no doubt that in another 18 months down the line, whether it's a period of poor performances, good performances followed by poor performances, or good and then they want an improvement, there'll be a managerial change again in the next year and a half, 2 years. Now, as for the interim manager, Ollie is at the wheel, is what I was hoping for. It didn't happen, just because he's not a very good manager, is he? I know he had a good spell, but he had a team full of superstars. And now Michael Carrick's come in. Michael Carrick, I think, has the potential to be a very good manager. I just hope this hasn't come too soon for him. A bit like Frank Lampard when he went to Chelsea. I feared that it was the weight of the shirt would weigh so heavy that it would set him back years in terms of managerial progress. Because I liked what he did at Middlesbrough. He built them up. He did get sacked by Middlesbrough. But sometimes you've taken a team as far as you can and they need a change. Because you got them right up into a promotion chase. Promotion push, rather. And then he couldn't get them over the line for whatever reason. And sometimes that just needs a little tweak. Now, Manchester United obviously is a different beast. And I think I'd hazard a guess that they think getting an interim in that knows the club front to back will help steady the ship. Bring in familiar faces, raise the players with a good, solid Premier League player. I don't know if he played with any of them. I don't think so because he's like 40 now. But there might be some youth player that's still in the squad. Is Tom Heaton still there? Probably him. I know he wasn't a youth player, but he's been there for years. And I'm not too sure how this is going to work out. I'm really not. I don't know why the other mic just turned on, so apologies if there was any backlash there. Yeah, I'm not too sure how this is going to work out from a Manchester United perspective. I'd like to think that he'll do well. I like Michael Carrick. I know he left us for Spurs, but I still like him. And I've always said this, I've got an affiliation for Manchester United. It's probably because they were the biggest team in England when I was growing up. I don't support them, like I've said. Between them and Arsenal, I choose Manchester United, but only because of recency bias and the way certain Arsenal fans conduct themselves at certain periods of time. But anyway, I'm not talking about that. Interim manager Michael Carrick till the end of the season. Now he is the bookies' favourite to take over permanently next season. Manchester United fans, what do you think about this? How do you feel? Would you be happy if he comes in and has a good turnaround in performances? Would you be happy to gamble that like you did with Ollie? That obviously ended how it did. Or would you like one of the other bookies' picks, which I can give you a list of a couple. It's off the top of my head, so I can't really remember the order, but Carrick's the favourite. Then for some reason, Ollie's still very short odds. Then Thomas Tuchel, which I find bizarre, the timing, because obviously the World Cup's around the corner. The only way I can see that happening is if England don't do well in the World Cup, or alternatively if they win the World Cup. Just one way or the other. But I don't think we're going to do either. I think we're going to be middle of the pack, probably finish runners up or get to the semis or something, and then he could leave as well. I don't know. But I just find it strange that Tuchel's the third choice. Then my favourite one for the job. Are you ready for this? A little bit of a drum roll. I'm not going to edit this, so there's not going to be a drum roll. But it is talking about England. Your very own Gareth Southgate. Now just picture this. And this is for every other fan in the Premier League to hear. Gareth Southgate, Manchester United manager. A bloke who had an average playing career, a terrible club managerial career, and I don't care what anyone says, he got us to 2 finals, but he lost in 2 finals. So he is a failure as a manager. If you look at the players that he had, he is a failure as a manager. And I'd argue this with anyone. There is not... And if you look at all the big clubs, even Deschamps is not a good manager. He had a very, very good team. And I think 90% of average managers in non-league could have taken that French team and won the World Cup with them. Equally, I think there's a fair amount of managers knocking about non-league and the lower leagues who could have taken that England team to the Euros against a poor Italy team. Beaten Spain in the Euros final, maybe not. Got us to the final when we went out to Croatia in the World Cup, 100%. And they're failures. Gareth Southgate is a failure as a manager. So you're going to bring in a failed manager to a failed club. What do you reckon is going to happen? It doesn't take a genius to work it out. And lo and behold, that's why I said 18 months to 2 years. Same again, boys. Get the next one in. Job done. And the last thing I want to talk about quickly is the next Premier League manager to get sacked. You've heard it here first. Now, I am not one to take light of the situation that West Ham are in. We are in mortal peril. This is the lowest I've felt supporting West Ham since the 2012 season. But the only pick me up that year is that my wife was pregnant with our first. So, here is a hot take for everyone. Here's Tottenham versus West Ham this weekend. Tottenham have just signed Conor Gallagher for 34 million. I don't think they needed Conor Gallagher, if I'm perfectly honest. I think they needed other areas of the pitch. West Ham have signed 2 strikers and apparently just getting in Nuno's backroom staff. Why it's taken nearly 4 months, who knows? But here's my hot take. Sorry, I keep waffling. I waffle even when Nick's not here. So goes to show I'm the problem, not Nick. Anyway, hot take. West Ham will get something at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this weekend. We are fucking shit. We are poor. We will go down. I wholeheartedly believe we will go down. But I don't think Thomas Frank has them players on board. I don't think he has the capability to turn around that sinking ship. And even if it isn't this weekend, Thomas Frank is the next manager to be sacked. You heard it here first. And on that note, boys and girls, I'll be back at some point in the next 10 days, either with the pooch or hopefully Nick. If not, I think we can all agree that Marley is an adequate replacement, and he probably knows just as much about football. Also, Morocco to win AFCON. They're in the final against Senegal. Don't know what it is. I watched 2 games, but they're going to win it. And on that note, like and subscribe. Peace and love. On to the next one. Peace.